Hello and welcome to Exclamation. My name is Arthur. Today I want to tell the story of how I went from feeling small, shy, and invisible to speaking to over 1,000 people in another language, and how finding my voice helped me find myself. So last week, I was talking about how I allowed myself to feel small, stay small, both physically and metaphorically, and my journey to finding my voice and so finding myself. And I want to extend that on now to talk about how I went from feeling shy and invisible to speaking in front of 1,000 people in another language and never feeling so alive in my life. You know, when I was 10, 11 years old, I felt the need to be seen because, as I say, I was physically small, and with some of the comments that I received, I let those get to me, titch. And of course, I was very sensitive, and that also those comments had an effect on me, and I would cry a lot, and so I'd get more bullying, and told to man up and so on. So all sorts of things coming out from there. But today I want to talk about the impact on this feeling small and invisible, but wanting that attention, wanting that affection. But then if I got it, doing increasing things to get that attention, but when I got it, I didn't know what to do with it, and it was terrifying. And I wasn't going to tell this story, it just came up now, but when I was 11, I had one of the most memorable weeks of my life, going on a music course, orchestral course with my flute. I didn't know anyone there, so it was kind of terrifying, but I made friends. I, looking back, and all the dialogue in my head and around me from people describing me as shy, it just doesn't make any sense, because when I was feeling comfortable and in a situation where people were seeing me, I didn't have that baggage that I had with other people. I came out of my shell. There were these three of us hanging out together and having an amazing time. But it was a mixed group. I went to a boys' school, and I've never told this story in public. But there was this one girl, Alex, who was another flautist, and we had a little connection, but I was far too shy, as I would have said then, insecure to really follow up on it. I was trying to catch her attention. There are a few little details which I'll keep to myself, but I did ensure I got the last slow dance in the disco at the end. She had other suitors, and I said, no, this one's mine. I've been waiting for this. But when we came to say goodbye, I couldn't say anything to her. And there was one occasion before that, actually, that kind of had a real impact on me. And we were on the coach to a trip to a theme park, and again, I'm trying to get attention. She happened to be sitting behind me. Well, I think I must have deliberately chosen to sit in front of her. And I wanted to talk to her, but I didn't know what to say. So I just stuck my head through the gap in the seats. I squeezed my head there and just made faces. I didn't, you know. And I got the response, "Oh, you're just showing off now." Showing off, again from last week. You think you're brilliant, and think, how can making faces be interpreted as showing off? I was playing the fool. I was trying to get her attention, but got that kickback. So that hurt. As an 11-year-old boy, just discovering the world of feelings and emotions and feelings for the opposite sex. So that kind of made it more difficult still. And I remember, I'll never forget her face as we met for the last time on my way out. I can't help thinking, I like to think that it was a look of, why are you going to say anything to me? At least a goodbye, and I couldn't. And it was symptomatic of where I was, desperately seeking attention, but being terrified when I got it. And I realized relatively recently, because I was still telling that story about being a painfully shy, and I thought, this is an incredible journey I've been on, to go from that painfully shy kid to that confident speaking, and now speaking to the camera. I do lives, I do video trainings, group coaching, and it's becoming more and more natural for me. I've given up on trying to be perfect, trying to be, this sort of influencer type that has a natural way of, getting the words out. Perfect is better than done. But I realized that, and other people telling me about how they use the exact same words, feeling shy, painfully shy, those exact words. And they have the same kind of aha moment that I had relatively recently, that it's not even about being shy. So I love being with people, and that's what it's really all about. It was a lack of identity, a poor self-image or no self-image. This sensitivity, this the downside of being an empath is that you're absorbing everyone else's energy and opinions. And it was a gift for me. It's always been a gift for me to see both sides of any argument, to see things from other people's perspective, to see God in everybody. But of course, the flip side is when someone asks you what you think and who you are, you have no clue how to answer. And I realized that it's because of this that we have this very unclear sense of self, lack of self. And how can one be confident in oneself if you don't know who you are? So I started mumbling for fear that people might actually hear what I had to say, and so judge me for it. Then I gradually started to gain some self-confidence, and that came from, and again, this is an extension of what I was talking about in the last video, that need to speak up became more powerful than the fear that was stopping me. I had things that were coming through me, and I've been increasingly recently reading about different interpretations of consciousness, and how actually science is increasingly documenting evidence to support the fact that consciousness does not originate in the brain, in the physical mind, because there's so many examples well documented in triple blind tests that things that cannot possibly be explained, that people are knowing things that they can't possibly have known. So I can now look back at those times in my teens when I started having the confidence to speak up. It wasn't even about confidence actually at the time. It was more that this inner voice had these ideas had to come through me, and I didn't know where they were coming from. You know, people like Rick Rubin, the most successful music producer ever. One of his books my daughter gave me for Christmas, on creativity. It's brilliant. But I've also heard him speak now on the telepathy tapes about this idea. Everyone knows about artists who get in the zone. That's how they create, and they all talk about when they're in the zone that their ideas come to them or through them, fully formed often, and they are very clear that it didn't come from them. And I have that a lot when I'm in creative mode, and I'm a creative person. I love creating. I don't know where these thoughts are coming from. I'm just being guided to. I'm following. I actually channeled a little structure to this, but the rest of it just comes through, and I don't know how that works. I don't know where these thoughts come from. Wayne Dyer had lots to say on that. So yeah, I began to let these ideas flow. I had to. I hadn't, had no choice, and that gave me some confidence that what I was saying, because almost because it wasn't who I thought I was, which was unclear anyway, I let those come through. And so that began my journey of finding myself. I call it level 1 because it was not quite remembrance yet. I wasn't remembering who I am. But it did help me reduce my need for external validation. Again, level 1, but it began that process. And years later, one of my big influences is Mike Dooley, and feature teacher on The Secret, the film and the book, and author of many books. One of my favorite books ever is Infinite Possibilities, The Art of Living Your Dreams, and that has had a profound effect on my life. And one of the things he says, not just in that book but in all his teachings, is he has this phrase: we all do the best we can from where we are with what we have. And that's so beautiful. That was my breakthrough moment back in 2018 when, well, I tell the story elsewhere, but I just had this moment where I had this realization, and I was able to have compassion for myself and stop beating myself up for, in this case, for being 5 minutes late instead of 5 minutes early. And so in that process of realization, I started to learn and grow and share what I was learning, and that helped me to speak with more and more conviction from the heart. And again, this whole channel is, the logo that came to me in a vision. I can only describe it as a vision coming out of meditation. This exclamation that plugged into my heart and was set ablaze. So with a bit of help from AI and image creation and little animation there, that was born. And it's a beautiful representation of that vision. So shortly after that breakthrough moment in 2018, I was asked to speak to a group of people. This was after. So I live in Spain, in region of Catalonia. Everyone, I think, has heard of Barcelona. If you're in northeastern Spain, and it's an ancient region with its own language and culture, much older than the country we now know as Spain. Before the various kingdoms and so on were united under the Kingdom of Spain. And so there have been various attempts to suppress that culture and language. I'm not going to get into politics now. I'm in favour of a federalist approach. No frontiers, no borders, but um, yes to a very firm yes to a conservation of cultural identity. We can share common values, but maintain our cultural identity, as I was talking a bit about last video. Um, so yeah, I was asked to speak about, as a foreigner, an expat in Catalonia, about this process. There were a series of peaceful demonstrations, marches, and with music, and which didn't ever disturb people, or at most a few minutes of procession kind of thing, of a march, and it was a happy occasion, an educational occasion, and I was asked to give my views on the process, and the relevance here is that yes, I prepared, but I prepared a lot, but it wasn't the notes and the rehearsal of what I had to say, because I always had the words of that hymn I think I mentioned last time. Don't worry what you have to say. Don't worry, because on that day, God's Spirit will speak in your heart. Will speak in your heart. And so the preparation was all about preparing me. It's that do, have, be, or have, do, be, instead of be, do, have. We people get it the wrong way around. They think that if they do things, they'll achieve things, they'll have things, and that will make them happy, be happy. We need to be happy first, and then it'll give us the inspiration to take action, and that will give us what we want. But so I'm all about the preparing and being that confident speaker, and I got up on stage, took the microphone out of its stand, and was speaking directly to the audience, and spoke for 15 minutes without notes in another language. And included in that was a moment where I was quoting from the Catalan anthem, and there was an unusual word that's not used in day-to-day life, ufana, and it slipped my mind. But the connection, that the rapport I'd gained with the people there, and there were one or two familiar faces. They supplied me with the word, and they were looking up with, some people were looking at me surprised to see me speaking in this way, but most just assumed that's who I was, because it was who I had become. And it made no difference. It was actually another moment of engagement, that far from, thinking, oh my God, I've forgotten the word, and it's the national anthem, it's goodness me. It was a moment of extra connection there. So that just reinforced this idea of being and connection and security is safety in who we are. So I always like to, the third part is all about the takeaways from my own journey, from, in this case, feeling shy and invisible, to having to be boldly speaking in front of all these people in another language. So I have 3 or 4 things to say here. The first thing is, it occurred to me that people are very easily persuaded of the negative. Um, you know, and I'm thinking, well, if you can believe the negative, why wouldn't you want to believe the positive? And I'm talking about these situations where you imagine the worst, or just not imagining that good things can happen. And I know why. I've been there. Things. It's not that things don't always go wrong or don't happen the way you want them to. Of course, that happens. But the problem is we focus on those moments and we completely ignore all the times when they go right. They go the way we want it to. And I know, again, to touch on a bit of neuroscience, our reticular activating system, which is a group of collection of nerves, which is like a gateway to the mind at the back of the base of the skull there, which inputs all the sensory information into the brain, and it filters everything that is not necessary for survival. And the possible risks and dangers go straight through to our reptilian brain and cause us to react instinctively. And so we have this instinctive attention to things which could be harmful to us, and that's the same reason why we pay more attention to the negative, and that's why news is so powerful and so focused on the negative. Positive news, good news doesn't sell. So I know why it happens, and if we're aware of it, though, we can decide to do something different. And it's not about ignoring the other stuff; it's just not focusing on it. I don't, why would we care more about what's true and less about what we want? Because the more we focus on what we don't want, the more we'll get it. If you're at all familiar and agree with the law of attraction, if not, then this isn't the place for you. Anyway, if you're watching this and you're still watching, then I'm sure you do, and therefore I invite you to suspend disbelief, as I did about 15 years ago, really now, to and for all the I was always an optimist, but I found myself after my divorce going into this cycle of every time the phone rang, it was going to be a problem, which only increased my anxiety around speaking on the phone, which I still had in those days. So if you can believe the negative, why not the positive? And related to that, if you have 1,000 people in the room, or even 10 people in the room, depending on the subject, you can get 10 different interpretations of a situation, can't you? So, and this, of course, is not an original thought by any means, but when something happens and we have a reaction to it, can we ask the question, is there another interpretation? Are we reacting with fear, or can we sense and respond with love? What would love do now? What would love say now? How can we interpret the situation differently? And this reminds me, I'm always quoting this. It's all about acceptance. Acceptance is the key to be truly free. Katy Perry, from that beautiful song Unconditionally. And apart from being a beautiful song, and I would obviously apply it. I'm applying it much more widely than she did in the song. But some people, it's sometimes hard, yes, to accept things. But we're not talking about accepting in the sense of tolerating bad things happening and not doing anything about it. We're talking about it's happened, it's there. Anything else is arguing with reality. It's happened, And we have to accept it. And also about accepting ourselves and other people, and the fact that everyone has their stories, everyone has their wounds, everyone has their experiences and programming, and we don't know what caused those things. Now, I go further than a lot of people in my radical sense of responsibility, not just for my own emotions, but for the reactions of others to me. And therefore, if I am experiencing something and it's causing me hurt, A, that's on me, but B, I attracted that situation to teach me something, and I could not attract it if I didn't have something in my vibration. And it seems it is quite radical, but it's also incredibly empowering, because it means that we can create our own experiences. We are not ever at the mercy of fate or other people, because those that do not vibrate with our energy will not be attracted to us and will disappear from our lives. And I've had that experience over and over again in my life. And I know that if I attract someone into my life that doesn't feel right, it's because I'm out of alignment. And when I get back into alignment, they disappear from my life. And sometimes that's hard. That's really hard. I've had that happen more than once. It's happened to me this year. But I know that we were just not vibrating at the same frequency, and that's okay. We need to accept that. We need to accept who we are, and that gives us that remembering who we are and accepting that we are more than these physical bodies. We are having this human experience is so empowering, remembering who we really are. And that brings me to the final point, which is not so much a takeaway. Well, it's something that I've set up as a reminder on my computer and phone. And the basis is, I am love, I am enough, I am free. This goes beyond affirmations, it's about remembrance. I've actually expanded it because I give you those three as a little thing, and you can adapt it to yours. I say I'm different because I'm doing this channel. Not everyone can or wants to set up a YouTube channel. You know, it wasn't ever something that was on my radar. But again, this is this voice that needs to come through. So this is my latest way of allowing those ideas to come through. I am love. I am enough. I am free. And with that, I'll wish you all the love and light, and I will see you next time.